When you think about it, philosophy is kind of comparable to Plato. I think we can all agree that Plato is one of the first substance most human beings ever handled. Therefore, it is, in a sense, a necessary foundation for us to then be able to develop other, more complex manual skills. In the same way, I'm convinced that philosophy is the basis of each and every intellectual field. Plato, like Plato, is the beginning of everything. Indeed, it is off of his dialogues that the Hellenistic philosophers, after ancient Greece but before the Roman Empire, came up with their own ideas. However, I myself know very little of the Hellenistic period, and it is for this reason that I have decided to examine its philosophy. It's dope. One day, Diogenes of Sinope was seen walking backwards. This, of course, raised many questions, to which Diogenes famously replied, "Aren't you ashamed, you who walk backwards on the path of existence, to blame me for walking backwards along the path of a mere promenade?" And this summarizes cynicism. The idea is to emancipate oneself from societal norms because the latter are seen as absurd by the cynics. However, cynic philosophers also believe that mere theory is incapable of convincing people of things. In other words, it is not by telling but by showing and demonstrating the futility of social conventions that cynics hope to make their point. As such, the same Diogenes publicly displayed his provocative way of living, naked in a wooden barrel with just a bag and a cup. People didn't need to be told that material belongings were unnecessary. They needed to see it, and Diogenes showed them. That being said, there is another reason why Diogenes lived the way he did. Indeed, cynic philosophers maintain that happiness doesn't lie in external material belongings. They are unstable, out of control, and thus likely to cause pain. On the contrary, true happiness consists in freeing oneself from them. By stripping himself of all of his possessions, Diogenes ensures that his happiness solely relies on his interiority, that he controls. In this way, the only thing he has to do to be happy is really just to decide to be happy. No longer can external factors impact his inner peace. He literally got rid of them. To wrap it all up, I think it's interesting to note that the term cynic means dog. Like a dog, a cynic philosopher eats and sleeps on the streets. Simplicity. He is satisfied with what he has, happiness. However, in contrast to the great respect that Greek society had for dogs, they viewed cynic philosophers as scandalous, immoral beings. But that's the whole point. Cynics and Stoics alike argue that external circumstances are of little importance. An example that is often used is that of the cow in the rain. In this weather, the cow is neither happy nor unhappy. She remains passive faced to external phenomena simply because she has no power over them. And despite the fact that this idea is also central to cynicism, Stoics add a degree of complexity to this idea of detaching oneself from things that lie beyond our control. In fact, Stoic philosophers believe that everyone and everything is part of this same rational principle that they call the logos. The logos essentially is the driving force of the universe. It is present in everything, in ourselves, in animals, in trees, and it is what determines the circumstances that we are confronted to in life. It is a natural law, and all natural processes, all external factors, follow this unbreakable rule. To put it differently, nothing happens accidentally because everything is necessary. Human beings thus have no other choice but to accept external factors. We do not control them. As a result, it is not circumstances that make me unhappy, but my opinion of these circumstances that does. For instance, if it is raining outside, it is not the external rain that is responsible for my low spirits, but my internal opinion on this weather that is. I could be thinking that it shouldn't be raining outside, but because it is, I'm frustrated. Fortunately, and this is a luxury that I do not have when it comes to the necessary rain, I can control my accidental opinions. Happiness is thus contingent on my inner thoughts, not on my outer circumstance. Epictetus says it better than me. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This is where the clash begins. Whereas Cynics and Stoics argued that we had to put up with whatever pain we felt because it was out of our control, Epicureans wanted to steer clear of suffering. Moreover, whilst Cynics and Stoics thought that material luxuries were to ban because they didn't lead to happiness, Epicureans thought that it was precisely in these belongings, in sensory enjoyment, that happiness could be found. Even so, while it is true that the satisfaction of our physical desires can generate happiness, it can also cause pain. This is why Epicureanism, as opposed to what a common misconception holds, doesn't advocate a frantic pursuit of all desires. It doesn't advocate a life of excess. One must therefore have the ability to differentiate between the desires that are susceptible to create tranquility in our bodies and souls, and the unrealistic desires that will, by definition, never be achieved, and thus cause pain. Epicurean philosophers believe that happiness depends on one's ability to only pursue those desires that are worth pursuing. However, material satisfaction will fail to make us happy if the knowledge of death constantly threatens our peace of mind. Epicureans don't think of death as something we should fret about. When we exist, death is not. When death exists, we are not. They basically think that, like our bodies, our souls are made of matter, of atoms. Therefore, when we die, both our bodies and our souls decompose. This means that we no longer have the awareness to realize that we are dying, let alone that we are suffering. In that sense, being afraid of death really is of little use. It signifies that you fear what eliminates your fear, which is incoherent. So, with the dread of death out of the way, we can fully appreciate our material satisfaction and be, for Epicurean philosophers, happy. But skeptic philosophers would disagree with this. If human beings are unhappy, it is precisely because they pursue the desires that they think are good and avoid the desires that they think are bad. Yet, in skepticism, there is no difference between good or bad. Nor is there a difference between what is pretty and what is ugly, what is enjoyable and what is painful, and so on and so on. Indeed, a skeptic philosopher doubts everything. Our judgments are not facts. In fact, facts don't exist. They are merely the result of social conventions, but in reality, we don't have the capacity to say whether something is actually better than something else. Because of this, we cannot affirm that one desire is superior to the other. Making this difference actually leads to unhappiness. It is indifference that provokes happiness. If you accept that making an accurate judgment is impossible, if you cease to judge and start to doubt instead, only then will you find peace of mind. For skeptics, doubting enables you to be happy. This is why we should systematically challenge every assertion. That being said, you could argue that if skeptics doubt everything, then theoretically, they should also doubt their own skepticism. However, this complicates everything, and I suggest that we stick to basics instead. For Cynics, the road to happiness essentially is simplicity. For Stoics, it is understanding and accepting the unbreakable laws of the logos. For Epicureans, it is the ability to choose wisely. And for skeptics, it is doubt. Personally though, I'm a bit skeptical about this one.
N'hésitez pas à verser de l'argent dans le compte en banque d'Elsa. On partage nos livres en commentaire.